Good afternoon and welcome to the Big Show. Big Show comes to you every single day at 5 o'clock. We try and break down whatever the issues are that are facing the world of Pittsburgh sports. Generally the Steelers, obviously on a Monday, definitely the Steelers. And, well, let's just say based on what we've seen for the last 24 hours, a lot of Steeler fans are not really happy. But first, the Big Show brought to you by Pella Windows and Doors, also brought to you by FanDuel Casino. We'll talk a little bit more about FanDuel Casino a little bit later. I will say also we are at Archie's, our favorite place at Archie's. So come down and enjoy Monday Night Football at Archie's with us as we are here every single week. And we always have a good time. So thank you to Archie for opening up the doors to us. And, of course, it's home of 80-cent wings, Monday through Thursday. Now let's get to the Steelers. I don't want to say rock bottom because rock bottom obviously would be 2-10, right? Or instead of 6-6, it would be 2-10. Rock bottom would be this is the worst season that they've ever had. Rock bottom would be they are not going to be able to climb out of this. And so, to me, that would be rock bottom. But Sunday kind of felt a little bit like rock bottom. And the reason it felt a little bit like rock bottom is because the Steelers were just completely bullied in their own building. I mean, forget about, not being able to make completions and, some days, the quarterback's not good or whatever. Some days it doesn't work. But if you watch the game, I mean, it is almost impossible to get outrushed by 200 yards in an NFL game. And, I mean, that's almost exactly what happened. I think it was 249 to 58. And to me, it's one of those things where I look at it and I just basically say it is important to note that the Steelers – this year have been predicated on stopping the run and being able to run the football. And yesterday, not only did they fail at both, they failed miserably at both. That's as bad as it gets. Giving up 249 yards, what was it? I think the most that they've given up in a home game in 50 years. I think there was a game in 1970 was the last time they gave up more yards than this at home. This is the most yards they gave up in Acrisure Stadium, / Heinz Field. I mean, awful. But you got to look at the big picture. And I hate to do this because I know everybody wants to be angry right now and they want to be upset and they want to, fire everybody and get rid of everybody. But perspective is they're still tied for first place. So there could come a time down the road where we talk about time to make changes, and maybe that time is now. But I really think if you look at the big picture, they're still right in the thick of it. If they get on a little winning streak and win a couple of games in a row, they could win the division at 9-8. And I think all they really have to do probably is split the games with the Ravens, and if they split the game with the Ravens, they'll probably win the division. So I feel like this is something now where everybody gets really angry about, a loss. And I know it's 2 losses in a row, and I know it's an ugly loss. But I'm not ready to get to let's fire everybody and cut everybody because I think that there's still 5 weeks of football to be played. We've seen it in the past where teams have got, hot, where a couple of things have gone right, and the next thing you know, they win 3 or 4 down the stretch, and they get to the playoffs. Now, that could be a conversation 2 weeks from now. I mean, say they lose to the Ravens and then, the next game after that, then you've got a problem. But right now, you've got to figure out how to win a game. If you're the Steelers, how do you win a game? Seems like it's probably, a little bit of an elementary type question, but it's true. How do you win a game if you're the Steelers? Well, the first thing to me from yesterday and the last 3 weeks, they've got to figure out their quarterback position. They've got to figure out the quarterback position and figure out what they're going to do at the quarterback position. Because the reality is, I don't know that they have a really good option, but I know if I were the coach, and I know that there's a lot of people that want Will Howard. Let's please stop with the Will Howard stuff. I mean, the guy missed how much time? He missed a lot of training camp. He missed a lot of when they install and teach and everything else. He's not ready to play. So you basically are talking about two guys, Aaron Rodgers and Mason Rudolph. Now, I will tell you this. I think they probably should have just kept playing Mason Rudolph. It is just to see if he could build off what he did against the Bears this week. Because I honestly think Aaron Rodgers looks to me like he might be done. And I mean done, I don't mean like, he's lost the step. He's lost the ability to, but he can still get it done. He can still sling it. I think he might be done. I do. And I feel like it's one of those things where he doesn't look like he can throw it like he used to. Doesn't look like he can move. And now with this broken hand thing, it looks like he's gun shy. Like he's afraid to get hit almost. And, when he got hit the other day, I will tell you this much. When he got hit and fumbled the ball and they scored a touchdown, I said, the game's over. I know they're only down 10-7 now, but the game is over. And it is basically one of those situations where if you get to a point where you're gun shy and you don't want to get hit and you're afraid to make plays and you're, trying to protect it, you probably shouldn't play. You probably need to go sit down. And what I mean by that is go sit down, and then what you will do is basically try and figure out who's next. So to me, I still maintain I might give Mason Rudolph a shot, and I'll tell you why. I just feel like at least he's young still, and at least he can throw the ball down the field. It's something they should work on all week. If you think about this offense, okay, all year long, I want you to list the number of big plays in the passing game that this offense has had. I'll start. I think it was against the Bengals, or who was it against, where they hit, I think it was the Bengals, where they hit Pat Freiermuth. Remember, he got behind the defense and they hit him over the top. That was a busted play. That wasn't even supposed to happen. But in terms of thinking about times when they've dropped back, they've thrown the ball deliberately down the field 20, 25 yards. I mean, you could probably count those plays on one hand. And part of that is I think the quarterback skills have diminished just quite enough to the point where he can't make those throws anymore. And they know it. The other part of it is they don't have a lot of real weapons out there. They don't have anybody that scares you out there. They just don't. And as a result, it's kind of one of those things where, you know what? Those big plays are harder to hit. Teams have figured out you can basically take DK Metcalf out of the game without really, giving a lot of help. You can take him out of the game. And then when you take him out of the game, you basically at that point can make sure that nobody else on that team is going to do anything against you over the top. Because that's just not, they don't have those kind of players. They just don't. And I think that's what you have to really look at, because it is now to a point where you've got to figure out how to win a game. And you're not going to win a game with the offense that we saw yesterday. I don't care how good your defense is. That offense that we saw yesterday, you're not beating anybody. But here's the other part of it. It's not just execution by the players. It's not. It's also game planning and situational thing. Some of their fourth down plays were abysmal. They don't seem to have any rhyme or rhythm to what they do. They don't seem to have anything that resembles an identity. They're supposed to be a power running team that gets the ball downhill. They don't do that. Yesterday, DK Metcalf had 5 targets. He had 32 yards. That's what he had, 32 yards. It's not good enough. You're paying a guy $30 million to be wide receiver 1, and I get it. Some of it is quarterback related, but at where he's at right now, right, he would basically have to have a 100-yard game every game the rest of the year to get to 1,000 yards. It's just not what you want, man. They need to get better. They need to do better. They need to become a team that figures out how they can score enough points to win these games. And the thing about it is, when your defense is really good, yeah, you can go around and say, oh, well, our defense will take care of it. We'll win games with our defense. Our defense will stop the other team, score some points. And, as a result, it's going to be, we don't need a whole lot from our offense. You can't do that right now. This defense can't stop anybody. They're not good enough to shut teams down. They're not good enough to, to be the defense that they were when, they were able to win games by just basically making the other offenses cry. I mean, they need some help from the offense. So, again, you got to solve what's wrong with your quarterback position. And here's the thing. I could be swayed probably either way. I'm just saying if you played Mason Rudolph against the Bears, he's a guy who gets more comfortable as he plays more. If you use that momentum, let him practice all week, I bet you the offense would have been better this week than it was last week, and certainly better than it was with Aaron Rodgers trying to play with one arm and afraid to get hit. And then you go to the next week. It would be, the third week. And to me, I think that's the direction you should go. I think that really, realistically, their offense, one of the biggest problems they have with their offense is very simple. They just don't scare anybody. They don't make big plays. There's no threats to make big plays. The offense is unimaginative. It's not creative. It doesn't force defenses to think. It doesn't make, defenses, it doesn't put them in a position where they're on their heels. It doesn't force them, it doesn't put a lot of pressure on them. It basically is going to be one of those situations with this offense where you've got to decide that it is important enough to try and score points at a higher level than you do. There's no sense of urgency with the offense. The offense doesn't scare anybody. Doesn't scare anybody. And that's where I would tell you. And I think that starts at the top. But, the other part of it is you've got a quarterback. You've got to decide if he's able to play or not. And right now, he doesn't look like a guy that can play. He looks to me like a guy who actually can't play. That's the problem, if you ask me. He looks like a guy who's done. And here's the other thing. His body language, let's talk about that. He looks like a guy who'd rather be on the beach right now or rather be fishing or hunting or doing whatever the hell he does in retirement. When you see his body language, he doesn't look like a player that's having fun at all. Doesn't look like somebody who really wants to be out there at all. Looks like somebody who's counting down the weeks. And to me, I just feel like that is such an important part of it. It's just one of those situations that you have got to think about it if you're the Steelers. Because, again, it's not about anything other than winning this week. We can talk about firing coaches and, all that other stuff, but the reality is they're 6-6. They're right in the thick of the AFC North. They've got a game coming up that if they win, they put themselves in, really good position. So how do you win this game? To me, it starts with who do you play at quarterback? And I'll be honest with you, I would play Mason Rudolph. I know there's some people that, he was not the problem against the Bears. Their defense was shredded against the Bears. And I assure you, if the offense would have scored 3 touchdowns yesterday, like they did against the Bears, they would have won the game. But bottom line is, and you see Aaron Rodgers missing throws that every NFL quarterback should be able to make. It feels to me like the first 4, 5, 6 weeks he was pretty good. And then, what happens to old people, older players? They tend to sort of wear out as the season goes down. But he's not the only one now. But I'm just saying that's where you start with your situation, to me. The second situation, obviously, is the defense. I think it's time to stop calling this defense anything other than what it is. And that is a collection of misfit toys who aren't that good. We've sadly overrated a lot of these players on this team. It's unbelievable how overrated some of the players are on this team. I mean, reality is, listen, Derek Harmon must be the greatest player that's ever played, because taking him out of the lineup, they give up 250 yards rushing or whatever it was. You look at it from that standpoint, there are people that are still trying to convince me that this defense is good and they're just on the field too much. No, they're not. The two old guys that make all the money, they look like old guys who show up on film maybe once in a while, but for the most part, they're no longer the explosive superstars they were. It's just Father Time is undefeated. Alex Highsmith looks like a shell of himself. He makes some plays in the run game, but for the most part, he's another one. You know, Peyton Wilson is a guy people love, and I know he makes 27 tackles every game, but I don't know that he makes impact tackles. I mean, I could go on and on and on. You know, the corners are just sort of average. The safeties are just kind of okay. The defensive line without Derek Harmon is a non-factor. You can't play defense that way. And the Steelers want to play defense that way. It really is just, you know, we can blame the scheme, we can blame this, we can blame that. I will say this, you know, they've got to find another way to attack on defense, because they don't have the players to do what it is they try and do. They don't have the players to do it anymore. You know, they've been a defense over the course of time where they've done a great job of you know, rushing the passer from their outside pass rushers, not really needing the blitz all that much. Every so often, you know, corner blitz or safety blitz, but for the most part, they get pressure with their front foot. They can't do that anymore. They're not good enough. And, you know, the other part of it is, I saw a team that wasn't interested in tackling yesterday. That's effort. You know, I'm not going to go as far as to say that they quit, but the reality is they might have quit. I mean, the signature play to me was the game's hanging in the balance. You have Josh Allen, a quarterback, who scrambles out, gets to the 5-yard line, is hit by the first Steeler. I forget who the first tackler that hit him. And there was 3 or 4 other guys that joined in, and he still somehow made it to the goal line for a touchdown. That, to me, is when I said this team really is quit. They are so soft right now on defense. And the worst part about it is I think they're the only ones that don't know. That's the worst part. They still think they're the big bad Steelers. They're not. Nobody's afraid of them anymore. It's amazing to me. It's absolutely amazing to me that when you look at what this team was and what we thought they were on paper and what they've actually become, guess what? It's just not that. I think that, you know, they can, because the Ravens stink and the Bengals aren't very good either, I actually think they could still win the division, but they ain't winning a playoff game. And if they don't win a playoff game, who knows? But the offense is terrible. The offense is terrible. The defense has had moments where it's been okay. But again, the best players on the defense, the highest paid players on the defense have been way overrated this year. And to me, you paid $80 million or whatever, $90 million for TJ Watt. I said it at the time. I'll say it again. You're never going to get that money out of him. Never. They should have traded him and got some picks for him. That's what they should have done. But the reality is they don't want to, because they're obsessed with doing business the same way they've done it for the last 50 years. They're obsessed with one-helmet players. They're obsessed with, well, he's one of our superstars. Well, you know what? You moved on from Troy. You moved on from Hines Ward. You moved on from Ben Roethlisberger. Don't tell me you can't move on from TJ Watt. I mean, at the end of the day, you know what? They should have, but they haven't. And now what? You got a guy basically who's out there who makes one play a game, it seems like. I'm just telling you, this is a team that really needs a reset. And I think that we've completely overrated a lot of these players on defense. But here's the problem. Again, they're still in the playoff hunt. Now, they lose a couple games now down the stretch. They lose this week and a couple more. Guess what? That's different. Then all of a sudden, I would say you probably are in a situation where you could probably begin to talk about the future. I know here's one of the most amazing things that's happened. The Stephen A. Smiths of the world, the Mike Greenbergs of the world, the who's the other guy that's always Rich Eisens of the world have all come around to the idea that it's probably time for a change at the head coach for the Steelers. But here's the one thing I'll caution, okay? I look at the Steelers and I say this: do you trust them to be creative in their hiring? Do you trust them to go out and get a young, innovative coach? Do you trust them to go get somebody who doesn't have ties to Pittsburgh or the Steelers organization? Do you trust them? That's what I would ask, because I don't know that I do. We know how they're going to do it. Now, you could say, well, but Paul, they hired Mike Tomlin, when they had, was it Russ Grimm and Ken Whisenhunt, I think, were the other two guys who all had ties to the Steelers, but they hired Mike. So, they might go out and do that again. Maybe they will. But what I've seen over the course of the last 10 years is an organization that is very uninspired when it comes to hiring people. I mean, has there ever been a worse hire than Arthur Smith? I mean, a team that is begging to build an offense, begging to get better on offense, hires Arthur Smith because he's been in the league for a long time. All I'm telling you is this. I think that it's probably time to move on. I get that. But I don't know that I trust them to make the right kind of hire to really inject a lot of new life and new energy and new everything into the Steelers organization. That's what I would tell you. Because I think that, I could so see them going out and hiring somebody who is basically has ties to Pittsburgh, is a part of the Steelers family, is a part of the Pittsburgh family. I could so see them doing that. So I feel like it's one of those things where you have to be careful, because I don't know that they'll be able to go out and do what you think in terms of changing the direction completely of this organization, because they still think the same way. And here's the other thing. This whole thing about non-losing seasons is so dumb. I've had this conversation with many people. The Eagles over the last 10 seasons before this season, from the last 10 seasons, have had 3 losing seasons. Would you trade the last 10 seasons of the Eagles for the last 10 of the Steelers? Of course you would. Who cares about a couple of losing seasons when you've won 2 Super Bowls and you've gotten to another? And I think that's what we've lost track of here in this area of the country. People have forgotten what it's like to win in the playoffs, to truly be contenders. People have forgotten all that. By the way, we're brought to you by FanDuel Casino. FanDuel, the #1 app for all of your betting needs. Go to FanDuel Casino. You download it. You can bet on games. You can bet on a bunch of different ways on any game that's out there. You can bet on NBA. You can bet on NHL. You can bet on just about anything you need to bet on. You can bet on the Penguins tonight if you want. But the game that we will obviously look at is the Giants against the Patriots. It is Monday Night Football. You want to talk about a team that went down to the bottom of the basket, of the barrel, and lost. The Patriots did a couple years, and guess what? They ended up with Drake May. Now they're one of the favorites to win the AFC. Anyway, the Giants are plus 7.5 if you're looking to bet it that way. Money line is minus 375 for the Patriots, over under 46.5. And then you can also bet on who scores touchdowns. You can bet on yardage for each player. You can bet on, Drake May to have 2 or more touchdown passes. All of these things are available if you go to the FanDuel Casino app, download it, get on your computer, on your phone, whatever, and you can do that. So FanDuel Casino, that's where it's at if you want to bet. Of course, Monday Night Football. Interesting, the Patriots are an interesting study for the Steelers, because the Patriots and the Steelers were at a high level for a lot of years. Then they both had their franchise quarterback retired. One team fell off the face of the earth and decided, we're going to fire our coach instead of allowing him to try and rebuild this process. They fired him. They ended up drafting Drake May, coming off of like a 3 or 4 win season, and now they're already back to where they're on the upswing, and obviously they hired a new coach. This is actually the second coach they hired, but they hired a new coach. They got a quarterback, and now they're a team that looks like they're on the upswing. The Steelers stayed the course. And in staying the course, they ended up basically with a bunch of 9 and 10 win seasons that led to 20 drafting in the early 20s and never really being able to improve. I think that's honestly the biggest issue, is that it's hard to improve and rebuild if you're not going to be able to draft a quarterback. I'm not saying you tank. The Steelers don't need to tank, but this thing where they're just trying to always trick up their roster just to be just good enough to have winning seasons. I mean, the obsession with the non-losing seasons here is absolutely ridiculous. To me, the Steelers have a lot of stuff to look at in the offseason. They have a lot of things they need to examine in the offseason. They need to really take a look at their philosophy overall in terms of what they do with free agents. There's so many things they have to do, but again, it all has to wait until they're out. Until they're out. And they're not out yet. So now you got to figure out how to win. And that's what I said. That's what they've got to do next week in Baltimore. They've got to figure out how to win. Then they've got to figure out how to beat Detroit, right? They've got to figure out how to win some games down the stretch in order to make sure that they give themselves a chance to make the playoffs. I'm not of it. I think right now they're at a point where, if they lose out, it's not going to improve their draft stock that much. I think, if they go 6-11, I guess they could probably get in the top 10 or 12. But the reality is, to me, you need to be in the top 5. So if you win a game or two, it's going to put you in a place where you're going to have to use your draft capital to be able to go out and trade to get up to where you need to get a quarterback. But that is all down the road. I hear people talking about firing Mike Tomlin, and I think it's, including guys like James Harrison and some of the former Steelers. But, again, that's a discussion for down the road. It makes no sense to have that discussion right now. It feels to me like this is the end. It feels to me like there will be one of these situations like they had in Philadelphia with the Eagles and Andy Reid, where it's run its course. They'll get together at the end of the year. They'll talk. They'll pretty much figure out this, and that is that it's time for both sides to move on, and they will. I don't think that it's going to be I don't think it's going to be as painful as people think it is, because there's this idea, well, the Rooneys never want to fire anybody. And I get that. They probably don't want to fire him. But by the same token, they've got to know that if, 8 was this is going on 9 years without a playoff win. That's just not acceptable. I mean, they haven't done that since the 60s. Really. They haven't done that since the 60s. In fact, they haven't gone 5 years without a playoff win since the 60s. And now we're going on 9. I think that's obviously a discussion for the end of the year. What's concerning now is, how can you win football games? Well, the first thing you got to do is, like I said, figure out your quarterback spot. Second thing you got to do is figure out how to get more out of your defensive superstars. If that means you've got to change your scheme a little bit, if it means you got to change how you use them, if you got to, change what you do, or, maybe even blitz a little more, whatever you got to do. Those are two things that I think are really, really important if you're going to continue to win, try and win this year. And you know what? My attitude towards that, because there's some people like, they should just tank for the rest of the year and forget about it because, it's over and, they're not going anywhere. I don't buy that. I think if you're playing, you might as well go out and try and play and win. You might as well go try and win, right? Might as well try and get it done. And that's where I would tell you they're at. Because they really, the realistic thing here is they've got to continue to go forward because they've got 5 more games left. At the end of the 5 games, then you reevaluate. That's when you can have all these other larger discussions, or maybe if you lose a couple weeks in a row. But right now, the focus has to be 110% on trying to win your next game. Because if you win your next game, it changes everything about where your season is going. All right, we'll do it again tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in. Goodbye.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.